Hello, Peachies. Welcome back to Dear Peachie. It feels like no one survives their teenage years without at least one flashback to questionable brows. Maybe it was the overly thick and harsh ones that drowned out your features, the super straight brows that didn't suit your face shape, or the completely mismatched pair that looked like they belonged to two different people. Brow regrets? We've all been there. Eyebrow shaping has always been one of the trickiest parts of grooming. It's so easy to overpluck, chase whatever brow trend is viral at the moment, or commit to a shape that you look back on years later and think, why did no one stop me? Brows are one of the most defining features of the face. When they're shaped well, they bring balance, structure, and proportion. They can subtly lift your expression, soften your angles, or frame your eyes in the most flattering way, just by adjusting the shape and the size. Some of us got so anxious about getting our brows right that we ended up turning to professionals, and there's nothing wrong with that. But relying on brow services long-term can start to burn a hole in your wallet, especially when all you really need is the right technique and a little practice. That's why today, we're breaking down a simple step-by-step guide to help you groom your brows at home based on your own facial proportions. We'll also go through how to fill them in correctly, so they look soft and natural. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to shape and enhance your eyebrows in a way that truly fits your features. Let's get started. Before we begin, make sure you have a few basic tools ready. First, you'll need an eyebrow pencil, a spoolie brush, an eyebrow razor, and a pair of eyebrow scissors. When it comes to scissors, we highly recommend getting the type with a curved tip. This gives you much better precision and control while trimming. And if you have a tweezer on hand, even better. It's useful for removing any fine, stray hairs under the brow that the razor might miss. Once you have all these tools prepared, you're ready to start grooming your brows properly and safely. When it comes to brow shaping, most of us are familiar with the classic three-point method. It is the method that we draw an imaginary line from the side of the nose to the brow head, then diagonally to the brow arch, and finally toward the outer corner of the eye. While this method can work, it's most effective on faces with naturally balanced proportions, like even horizontal third ratios or standard eye spacing. For many of us, though, our facial proportions are unique, so using a fixed formula often leads to brows that look forced or unnatural. Today, we're going to use a much more flexible and intuitive approach. Instead of chasing a predetermined brow shape, we're going to identify and work with your brow ridgeline. So what exactly is the brow ridgeline? Beautiful, natural-looking brows aren't defined by the outline you draw. They're defined by their internal structure. At the center of every brow is what we call the eyebrow ridgeline. This is the core spine where the natural direction of your brow hairs meets and flows together. Think of it like the backbone of a mountain range. This structural line is what gives your brows their strength, their direction, and their dimension. When you build your brow shape outward from this ridge, the result blends seamlessly with your features, instead of looking drawn on or artificial. First, we'll start by mapping out the key landmarks of your brows, the head, the arch, and the tail, to help us identify your unique brow ridgeline. Once we have that core structure, we'll determine the ideal height and width of your brows based on that ridge. We'll groom the shape using an eyebrow razor, following the natural flow we've established. And finally, we'll soften the whole look by trimming any excess length, making sure the brows sit neatly and naturally against your features. If you look closely at your brows, you'll notice that the brow ridgeline determines the distance between your brow and your crease or eyes. To map out your brows, just use your regular eyebrow pencil. First, let's locate the brow head, the very start of your brow. It shouldn't extend past the vertical line running from the outer edge of your nose tip. If the brows are too close together, the face can end up feeling cramped, almost like you're constantly frowning. Using this point as a reference, draw a guideline at the front of your brow. But what if the brow starts too far out, leaving too much space between the brows? That can make the face look flat or disconnected. Hence, the brow head shouldn't pass the vertical line from the inner corner of your eye either. The easiest way to find the perfect spot is to take the midpoint between the edge of your nose tip and the inner eye corner. That's where your brow head naturally sits. Now, let's move on to the brow arch. If the arch sits too far forward, past the vertical line above the outer edge of your pupil, it can make your features feel crowded. On the other hand, if it's too far back, beyond the vertical line above the outer corner of your eye, it can make the face appear wider than it actually is. Again, find the midpoint between these 2 points. That's where your brow arch naturally belongs, right on this line, giving your brows a balanced, lifted look that complements your face. Finally, let's look at the brow tail. Traditionally, it's placed along the line that extends diagonally from the wing of your nose to the outer corner of your eye. This works if you're only considering the upper and middle thirds of your face. But to really achieve balance, we also need to think about the lower third ratio. Draw another line from the corner of your mouth to the outer eye corner. The most harmonious position for your brow tail is actually right at the midpoint between these 2 lines. That's where your brow naturally ends, giving your face a balanced and lifted appearance without looking too extended or too short. By the end of this process, you should have 3 markings at your brow head, arch, and tail like this. Next, we'll determine the brow height. If you're not very experienced or confident yet, don't adjust the height around the brow head. Even small adjustments can throw off the whole shape. Instead, start by marking a point near the middle of the width of your natural brow head. This will serve as your reference point for the rest of the brow. From this point, extend an imaginary line toward the brow tail. The tail should at least line up with the reference point at your brow head, never dip below it. If your reference point is set too low and you use it to guide the tail, you'll end up with a droopy, downturned brow that can make the face look tired or sad. The height of the brow is also related to brow arch. The higher the arch, the more lifted your brows look, giving your face a stronger, more defined presence. At the same time, a higher arch can make the middle third of your face appear slightly longer, visually lengthening your face, which tends to suit a more mature look. On the other hand, flatter or straighter brows create a softer, more youthful appearance. For a standard, wearable brow shape, the arch only needs to sit just slightly above the brow head, enough to give lift without exaggerating your features. Once you've marked all your key points, the head, arch, and tail, simply connect them with a smooth, gentle line, then erase any extra guidelines you drew. And there you have it. The line you've created is your brow ridge line, the core structure to guide the rest of your grooming and filling. Since our brow hairs naturally grow along the brow ridge line, and we've already identified it, shaping it becomes much simpler. Using the brow arch as your turning point, we will work from there to shape the rest of the brow. To define the brow width, we map out the upper and lower edges. For the upper edge, the front half of the brow runs roughly parallel to the brow ridgeline, sitting just slightly above it. The outer half, from the arch to the tail, follows the same principle, keeping the brow balanced and proportionate. For the lower edge, the front half of the brow usually follows its natural width, so we'll stick to the natural line there. As for the tail, there's no strict rule for how thick the lower edge should be. If you want a softer, more lifted look, you can keep the lower edge of the tail slightly higher, giving the brow a gentle lift. Once you've mapped these points, you can lightly trace the overall shape and width of your brows. This framework gives you a clear guide before you start trimming or shaving. Next, we will begin shaving our brows. To shape your brows, start with the upper edge of the brow front. Using the guide you just created, gently shave away any stray hairs that fall outside the outline. Next, move to the lower edge of the brow tail. Use your fingers to stretch the skin slightly at your temple and squint your eyes a little to tighten the skin. Then, lightly shave off the extra hairs to clean up the tail. Around the upper edge of the brow arch, you can shave a tiny bit more to smooth out the overall shape. As you do this, check the arch from time to time. If it looks too sharp or angular for your liking, shave a little at a time to soften and round it out. Always go slowly and make very small adjustments. Although we usually suggest not touching the width of the brow front, there are exceptions depending on your features. If the space between your brows and your eyes is quite narrow, like less than the width of one index finger, you may need to clean up a bit of the lower edge at the brow head to open up the area. Once the overall brow shape is set, it's time to trim any long brow hairs. Start with the front half of the brow. Use a spoolie to brush the hairs upward, applying gentle pressure so the hairs stand up. You'll notice some hairs sticking out above your defined upper brow edge. These are the ones to trim. Carefully snip them with your scissors. For the back half of the brow, do the same in reverse. Brush the hairs downward and trim any that extend past the lower brow edge. Finally, use your spoolie to brush through the hairs, following their natural growth direction so everything sits neatly in place. At the brow head, lightly shave at a slight angle toward the side with your brow razor. This subtle adjustment softens the front of the brow, making it look more natural and less boxy. Now, you got your brows shaped. Let's move on to filling in your brows. For this, you can use either a brow pencil or brow powder, depending on what you prefer. If you're a beginner and worried about overdoing it, brow powder is the safest way to start. Using a flat brush, dip into a darker brown shade and define the brow ridgeline first. Start at the middle of the outer half of the brow, from the arch to the tail, creating a core guiding line. Next, take a lighter brown shade and use soft, sweeping motions to add a wash of color above and below the brow ridgeline. The goal is a brow that's fuller in the center and naturally softer toward the edges. Remember, from the brow head to the tail, the overall width should gradually taper for a natural look and become more slender from the head to the tail. If you prefer using a brow pencil, the process is similar. Make sure the tip is sharpened to a flat angle for easier application. Start by drawing the center line of the brow, then softly fill in the upper and lower edges, blending as you go. Finally, add tiny hair-like strokes at the brow head to mimic its natural growth. By mixing soft fills with defined areas and following the natural structure of your brows, you'll achieve a balanced, natural-looking finish. Once you're comfortable, you can even make small adjustments to the height of the brows to fine-tune the distance between your brows and eyes. And that's it. With just a little practice and the right techniques, you can shape, trim, and fill your brows so they perfectly suit your face, naturally, effortlessly, and without relying on expensive salon visits. Many conventional eyebrow methods, like simply outlining and filling, often end up looking harsh, flat, or not natural. They create a shape that sits on your face rather than harmonizing with your features. We hope this video helps those of you who want to give brow shaping a try on your own. With a little practice and a bit of patience, you'll get the hang of shaping them in a way that truly complements your face. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you in the next video. Goodbye.